Obviously, there are a ton of great reasons to live in Toronto, but it can't all be rainbows and unicorns. So in this video, I go over the 3 worst things about living in Toronto. Hey everyone, my name is Morgan Little. I'm a realtor here in the Greater Toronto area who makes educational and entertaining videos like this one about Toronto and the surrounding area real estate market, as well as what's happening in the city. If at any time you have any questions about moving to Toronto or just want to pick my brain, feel free to book a call with me by clicking my Calendly link in the description below. All right, let's talk about it. Number 1 is, you probably guessed it, it is expensive. It is wonderful living in the best city in the country, but it comes with a price. I tried to find some consistency in different rankings that have been done about the most expensive cities in North America, and for some reason, I didn't find the same results in different polls that I came across. Some have Vancouver as the most expensive city in North America, whereas some have New York at the top spot. Either way, Toronto ranks somewhere in the top 5, along with, according to the CNBC ranking done in June 2022, New York, no surprise, Mississauga. You'd think that a suburb, even though Mississauga is a major city in its own right, would be a bit more affordable than the city it's suburbing, if that's a word, but apparently not. Vancouver, number 3, of course. Hamilton, which I found interesting, and my favorite and yours, Toronto, rounding out number 5. Whichever way you slice it, Toronto's expensive. If you're watching this, you're probably aware of our housing supply shortage across the country, but in Toronto especially. This has led to the price of housing to become increasingly unaffordable for some, and therefore prompting people to rent, which has driven up rents as well. As of this recording, the average 1-bedroom in Toronto goes for about $2,300 a month, with the average 2-bedroom going for upwards of $3,000 a month. And then there's the average condo price, which is often the starter home for people in the city, sitting at just over $700,000, which recent studies say you need to make about $135,000 a year to be able to afford. Now, most likely, if you're moving to Toronto, it's either for work or to pursue some type of business or passion that will hopefully net you more income than you were able to make wherever you moved from. So there is an element of the major city being more expensive because there's more money to be made here. But obviously, that's not the case for everyone. And for many people, that means moving here with friends or roommates so you can split the cost of rent, hopefully with a plan of using that money that you save to build up a down payment and eventually be able to afford a condo or home. But I should mention that if you do plan on buying in Toronto, there is an expense unique to the city that you won't find anywhere else, and that is an additional land transfer tax when you purchase a home. Yes, you get charged the land transfer tax by the province of Ontario, but buying in Toronto gives you the added bonus of a secondary land transfer tax, something you need to keep in mind. And number 2 is somewhat related, the cost of living. So it stands to reason if the housing in Toronto is expensive, then so is the cost of living. From food to entertainment to Ubers, it can add up quickly, especially depending on your lifestyle and the stage of life that you're in. There's always something to do in Toronto. And even if you're not the type to really go out, just groceries alone can be pricier than you may be used to in other cities. I'm from the west end of the city where there are a lot of options ranging from No Frills. There's 2 of them, one on King and Jameson, one at Lansdowne and Dundas, and those are on the lower end of the price scale. But then I have Metro and Longo's and Garage and Liberty Village, which are a bit closer, so I usually end up going to those. But these are quite a bit more expensive and have gotten even more so over the last year or 2 with supply chain issues and inflation. And please believe, now that those prices are up, they're not coming back down. I also tend to use meal delivery services like HelloFresh and Good Food, so I try to limit what I buy at these stores, but there's always something you need. And there's also options like Instacart and Uber to get your groceries delivered to help save you time. But guess what? Those have fees and can push up your food bill even higher as well. And when it comes down to simple services, you might find that what it would cost you to get something done from a contractor or a painter in another smaller city just might cost more here. Yes, there are more options, which might make you think that their prices would be lower, but these people have office space and overhead that is likely also more expensive to operate here, so the prices can be higher. And remember, you usually get what you pay for. Don't forget to consider transportation costs, gas, insurance, parking if you drive, all of which is more expensive here, or a TTC pass, which is our transit system if you plan on taking transit. You'll have to consider that monthly cost as well. Cost of going out. This topic deserves its own little section because if you just eat in and live a simple life and don't go out to events or concerts or sporting events, then like I mentioned in the last segment, your cost of living will be high enough just buying groceries. But if you're moving to Toronto to take part in its vibrant entertainment or nightlife, then be prepared to fork out for it. I was recently in Spain where a beer costs about €1 and a bottle of wine is not much more than that. When I came back, I went to meet a friend for a drink on a patio and was quickly reminded that I was no longer in Europe when I realized the drinks were $15 a piece. I don't know why we've all accepted this as being the norm, but that's a whole other video on itself. And if you're going out for dinner at, say, a mid-range restaurant, you can probably expect to pay about $50 or so for your meal in an app per person, and then it goes up from there if you're adding drinks. And then you have your Uber to the restaurant that will likely cost you maybe $20 or $30 depending on how far you go. And then you have your tickets or entrance fees or to whatever it is that you're going to do. All of this is just to say that it can really add up quickly. You've been warned. And speaking of Ubers, that brings us to number 3, and that is commuting. It is awful, no matter how you look at it. Wherever you're going, whenever you're going there, there's traffic or construction or an accident or weather. And like I mentioned, I grew up north and I lived in Montreal, so I've seen my fair share of snow. But the second the GTA gets a dusting of snow, it's like everyone forgets how to drive. It really is bizarre. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit maybe, but obviously there are busier times than others, mainly rush hour, which basically lasts from 6:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. And then you have it start back up at 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. for lunch. And then a short break and it's back up to 3 p.m. to 6 or 7 p.m. So if you can get where you need to go in those small little windows, you'll be fine. But if you have a job, or you like going to places that most other people like going to as well, then you'll probably be traveling at the same time as those other people. And newbies often kind of think that if I'm going the opposite way of traffic, I should be good. The problem is both the Gardiner, which crosses the bottom of the city, and the 401, which runs along the top, have people who need to get to the other side. So whether you're going east or west, just as many people need to go the other way. So unfortunately, that theory does not hold up. And really, I'm talking about all different modes of transportation. Car, Uber, taxi, transit, however you choose to get around. Just plan for delays. There was a time during COVID that was beautiful. You could zip across the Gardiner in minutes with no one else around. The good old days. Except for, the whole pandemic thing, but let's not get into that. We do have bike rentals, so that might be a good option that you want to consider in the summer months. So those are my 3 top worst things about living in Toronto, but we got to talk about the weather as well, because this one really depends on where you're moving from, because Toronto tends to be one of the warmest cities in Canada, being in southern Ontario. So if you're coming from somewhere like Sudbury, Manitoulin, which is where I grew up, or somewhere like Montreal, which is where I spent 10 years before coming to Toronto, then you'll be fine. We don't get that winter weather that you're used to. But if you're moving from another country with a warmer climate or somewhere in the US that doesn't see the same seasons that we do, you may be in for a bit of a shock to your system, but you'll get used to it. Now on the flip side of that, summers can get quite humid in Toronto. As I mentioned, I was in Spain in July of this year and they were having a heat wave there with temperatures in the 40s. Obviously that's not pleasant for anyone, but I gotta say it's more of a dry heat and it doesn't make you feel heavy and sticky like it can in the middle of the summer in Toronto. Luckily, we are situated on Lake Ontario, and even just taking a walk down by the water can provide some relief in the middle of summer, as you'll often find like a 10-degree difference from the city core. Also goes for the winter though, it gets cooler down there. So there you have my 3 top reasons you may want to consider not moving to Toronto, plus a little bonus of the weather. But hey, the pros far outweigh the cons here. I love the city, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else, but I wanted to give you some perspective and things to consider if you're thinking about making the move to the 6. If I left anything out that should be included, put them in the comments and we can add them to the list. And as always, if you have any questions, you want to pick my brain, you're thinking about moving to Toronto, book a call by clicking my Calendly link in the description below, and I look forward to chatting. Till then, be well.